This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Last Man Standing podcast. Yes, I'm your host, Ben Standig, and I cover the Washington Commanders for The Athletic. It's Wednesday here in the DMV. It was a scorcher today out in Ashburn. I looked at my phone at one point. It said 98. Definitely felt I was on the sun, though. It was crazy hot, and I wasn't even doing anything except for watching practice and talking to Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. They held their press conference today following a rather uneventful waiver claim situation. The Commanders did make a move. They signed wide receiver Noah Brown. But we talked about Noah Brown. We talked about what the moves that they did make to set up this roster at 53 and a bunch more with our guy, Bram Weinstein. Of course, the voice of the Commanders. We got into how would we rank the wide receivers, biggest strengths, biggest concern, and a bunch more, including what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn had to say, what was our biggest takeaways from them. So we'll get to all that in a moment here on the Last Man Standing podcast. And, you know I've already said this on the previous one, but the standing room only feed is officially over. A little sad, but excited as well, of course, to get officially going here on this pod. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, it's because you've subscribed and you're ready to go. If you haven't, of course, it's a new feed. So if you just randomly kind of stumbled in here, it's a new feed. You got to subscribe wherever you do your podcasts to get this thing. In addition, tomorrow, meaning Thursday, and maybe today, if you're listening to it on Thursday, on The Athletic, my sixth NFL agent survey is going live. I'm excited for you guys to see it. There are a couple of things that have to do with the Commanders, and Adam Peters get some mentions, and maybe even somebody else with the organization talked about things like Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones and what the heck is going on there. What is Patrick Mahomes' actual value? Where's the wide receiver market going? And of course, annual staples like best among the GMs, like best talent evaluator, who do you trust the most unstable organization, and most stable, things like that. So it's going to be, I think it's a good read. I'm excited for you guys to check it out. And the good news is, if you're not yet a subscriber, you can just click on the link tomorrow, or if you go to The Athletic, just go to the page, you'll see, whatever you can get to, the Commanders page. I almost said the old name. Click on the article and it'll let you go in there. You can get it for $1 a month just for The Athletic, $1 a month for a year, or you get for $1 a week for a year. You get the entire suite of the New York Times. So the New York Times itself, plus The Athletic, plus Wirecutter and the games and everything else that they have. So it's a great deal one way or the other. I look forward to you guys reading it. Let me know what you think. You can hit me up, of course, on Twitter/X at Ben Standig. Email me, bstandig@theathletic.com, or chime in the comment section. Always appreciated. Comment section there, as well as on iTunes. You can leave a rating and a review. Much appreciative. All right, so Bram and I talk about a bunch of these topics. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the Commanders have a 53, and yeah, it's bizarre, but even though they had the second waiver claim, they didn't make a single move today in terms of the waivers. Simultaneously, they lost two players in waivers. KJ Henry was claimed by the Bengals, Tariq Castro-Fields by the Panthers. I mean, what a world that the Commanders lose players but don't actually pick anybody up. And, Adam Peters was pretty straightforward about it. He's like, look, we just didn't think that there was anybody that we liked enough to then lose somebody on our own team. When you have these large practice squads now, right? I mean, you'd have to let the NFL evaluators truly make the distinction. But the gap between guys who were picked up today, I don't know that there was a single player who was added today. And granted, I'm not that well versed with everybody, but in talking to people around the league, I don't get the sense that there was like some guy that they just whiffed on and didn't take. And simultaneously, they're going to have a 16-player practice squad along with the international player prospect, or international player program, all that. So they have now 15 of the 16. They brought back guys like Bryson Tremaine and Mitchell Tinsley. Sam Hartman is there. They brought back Michael Wiley and Chris Rodriguez, Julian Good-Jones on the offensive line, Andre Jones at defensive end, and some others, like Anuzium at corner. So a lot of the guys that people are looking like, oh no, how'd you let them go? A lot of those guys are back. And that's why not using a waiver claim, it's not the biggest deal in the world. It's just that you do have the opportunity to pick over everybody else that the other 31 teams let go, and they decided they were good to go. So good on Adam Peters. What we talked a lot about, Bram and I talked about the discipline that he has consistently shown. If you have a chance to go online, you can see on my Twitter feed, part of the reaction I asked Peters, how has he been able to sort of maintain this discipline, and what would he say to fans who want him to go make that bold move, who don't want to just be patient? They want to go for it this year. And I know that Brandon Ayuk, hypothetically, just to use somebody who I may have hypothetically mentioned to him today, that he's a young guy. It's still a longer term play, but you're giving up the picks and you're spending a lot of money. That's why it's a short term play. Because of a long term play, you're building the picks and having your cap space. That's a longer term deal. A shorter term deal is spending a lot of your assets on an individual player. And he, he basically said, we're trying to figure this out long term, not just about today, but simultaneously, we like the group we have. We like the direction we're going. And sure, these are things that people in his position say. Same with Dan Quinn. I try to be as honest with you guys as I can, and I have found little fault with what they have done so far. I'm a process guy more than a results guy, and their process, this is no Josh Harris, trust the process bit, but the way they've gone about their business makes a lot of sense to me. Now it's just a matter of, how does Jaden Daniels, how do other guys develop, how does the coaching staff work, etc. But yeah, so if you have a chance to go look at my Twitter feed, you'll see that. You'll see Peter's reaction to my intimating that maybe there's a player on his former team that fans would like him to go get. All right, so don't want to take too much time here, but again, go check out The Athletic tomorrow. You'll see the agent survey, and if you missed it, I broke down my view of the moves that they made on Tuesday to get down to 53 and what that said to me about where this team is at. Also today, they traded away John Ridgeway. Talked about this yesterday, that there was that they were actively trying to trade him. I heard this morning that several teams were still showing some interest. They ultimately swapped him and a 2025 7th-round pick to the Saints for a 6th-round pick. So, basically moving up around and moving on from Ridgeway, who will now reunite with Chase Young, plus our guy Matt Paris down there in New Orleans. Look, I like Ridgeway, good player. They obviously, that's a position where they have a lot of options. It kind of felt like Fedarian Mathis might have been the guy that they were going to move on from. But at the same time, I heard in talking to people before the cut down that I don't know if it was a market out there for Mathis. So maybe they just decided we can get something for Ridgeway. We can't for Mathis. The gap isn't big enough. And either way, they're both going to be the 4th guy with Johnny Newton once he's ready to go. That, it isn't as big of a deal. So that happened as well. I mentioned they signed Noah Brown. They have a practice squad. Again, a lot of names that they did bring in 2 veteran defensive linemen. Carlos Watkins played for Dan Quinn, played some defensive tackle. So they've got some options now with Ridgeway gone. All right. That said, let's get to it. Here we go. Bram Weinstein and I, voice of the Commanders. He's also the guy in charge of Empire Media, talking about our big takeaways, big concerns, where we find strengths, the receivers, and a bunch more about this team right after the. It's not the initial 53 anymore, but it is still a fluid one, perhaps. So here we go. Myself, Bram Weinstein, here on the Last Man Standing podcast.
Hey everyone, Bram Weinstein here, play-by-play voice of the Commanders and founder of Empire Media, and we are so excited that Ben Standig has come along and joined us with Empire with his awesome podcast, Last Man Standing. I wanted to tell you about our two other primary shows, and selfishly, mine, the Bram Weinstein Show, which can be heard on ESPN 630 in DC from 11 to 12, but then becomes a podcast that goes up immediately at 12 o'clock, 5 days a week. Some of the best Commanders and DC sports coverage you're going to get. So if you love Ben's show, check out mine as well. And also, don't forget to check out the John Keim Report from Empire Media as well, the ESPN Insider. We are bringing you the best Commanders coverage all season long. Be sure to subscribe to all three of our Empire shows, Last Man Standing, The Bram Weinstein Show, and The John Keim Report.
All right, as promised, joining me here, the voice of the Commanders, and I guess technically now one of my bosses, Bram Weinstein is here.
Stop calling you that.
You know,
Stop calling you. We're partners here. We're
partners.
We're building something together. That's what we're doing.
There we go.
If you don't know what we're talking about, Empire Media is the production company I own, so I guess I'm your boss. But like, I treat it more like we're partners. So John Keim does his show on this network. I just moved my radio show, which still does air on the radio station from 11 to 12, but that's now owned under Empire Media, becomes a podcast here. And we're happy to have Ben here too with Last Man Standing. And I hope you have this feed now, by the way, because we finally have separated from the old feed for reasons that don't need to be explained. But we had to separate from the old feed. So we hope you have finally migrated over and found us here.
Look, it's appropriate. It was cut down day. I had to chop off a feed, and there's no practice squad, so nobody's coming back.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a lot to discuss, and yet simultaneously, I don't know that we have a lot to discuss in the sense that like we didn't get the I guess the Noah Brown signing counts as notable, of course, but even that, it's not like they're not getting Brandon Ayuk, but it's not like something overly splashy. But we kind of have a team now. We kind of know what their roster looks like. There could still be some changes, of course, between now and the opener against Tampa, but nonetheless, here we are. We'll get to some specific questions in a minute about kind of what's gone down and where we're at. But I guess just broadly, how we feel. Oh, you know what? Before we even get to that, fortunately, I realized that this is the perfect night to have you on because of the actual big news in the NFL. Taylor Heineke gets traded from the Falcons to the Chargers, and you being the foremost Taylor Heinekeologist, how are you feeling about that?
I love that guy. So, he will have a moment seared in my brain for eternity because my first season calling the games, they went to the playoffs. He had that diving for the pylon touchdown in dystopia world because nobody was in the stadium when it happened. And for, I'd say a fleeting moment, I thought we were going to have an all-time upset. Like they were down 2 points to Tom Brady in Tampa Bay the year they ended up winning the Super Bowl late in the third quarter. And I honestly believe that if that stadium was full, not that I don't trust Brady to come through anyway, I don't know, like momentum might have flipped. I mean, but it was weird. Like it's one of the craziest plays in team history, recent memory for sure. And nobody was there. It was like me and 100 people saw it live happen. It was wild.
The first quarter, usually I'm watching the game from the press box. For the first quarter, I went out into the stands with a couple other guys to watch the game. And like you said, it was literally the players on the field, the coaches on the sideline, a couple of ushers here or there, and us. Yeah. And that was it, watching Tom Brady in a playoff game against Taylor Heineke. It is, and this sort of does dovetail into where we're at with this team, that the Taylor Heineke pylon dive is probably... Oh boy, it's the most like real signature moment that this team has had in I don't know how long. I mean, maybe it's you like that, like we have to go back to that, but it's the list is short and it's arguably the top one because of how dire it's been, and that's what makes what's going on now so interesting to try to get them back on the right track.
Like they had a couple of major marquee wins the years after that. Like they beat Tampa a year later. That was a marquee win. They beat Philadelphia Monday Night Football when
beat Pittsburgh when they were undefeated.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh one was the same year, was the COVID year. So that they beat them when they were undefeated. Right. So the ones subsequently, but because they didn't make the playoffs in those other two scenarios, those are just memorable regular season moments, and they kind of don't stand out. And it's funny that you bring up Heineke. Like it, this team, like I'm hoping and I'm seeing, and I think Dan Quinn's talking about it. It's like you get this kind of Heineke feel to it a little bit, where the guys like each other. Like I think the magic of Heineke was he was a dude that everybody liked, and everybody was so realistic about what his ceiling was, and there was just kind of only so far it would go. But everybody really liked him. Everybody was rooting for him. I think the city kind of galvanized around him. He was a total gamer too. Like he was just fun to watch. He was gonna bring, like, this is the DQ stuff. He will bring the effort, the enthusiasm. He's never gonna give up and put his body on the line, probably unnecessarily at times. And so I'm always rooting for that guy because he's got a crazy story to like even be playing in the NFL and now to have shuffled around to a few different teams, and teams are still trading for him. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I always used to think of the in Ferris Bueller, to skew old, the part where the secretary to the principal is explaining Ferris Bueller's power. Oh, the sportos like him, the dweebs like him, like all the different groups in like him, and that's what makes him him. And that's kind of what was with Heineke. And again, to go forward here, like I think this is where Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels are interesting because of the fact that Dan Quinn's, to use his words, superpower seems to be beyond his defensive scheming, is that he is a connector of people. You can, that's what we heard before he was hired or when he was hired. And now I've gotten to watch it as you have for the last several months, and you can see it. You mentioned that these guys are, they're having fun. You can, that is happening as well while working hard, but you can feel the joy is back out there a bit. And then I think the same thing with Jaden Daniels to an extent, in that he's this, he's a guy that he seems to gravitate towards everybody. All right. All that said, we'll talk about more over the next, months, but things happened over the last couple of days here. The roster shaped up. I guess we can just do this since now we've talked for a little bit. I came up with a few questions, and this is a way to sort of go through what's kind of happened here. And we'll do that. You ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right. As it stands now, with the roster that they have and everything else, what do you see as the biggest strength of this team with basically a little over 1 week to go before week one?
I think the middle of the defense, like in between the hash marks. Like I trust Allen. Payne, rejuvenated. Payne looks like he's in incredible shape. I know we haven't seen him play in the preseason, but I'm like waiting for him to look like the guy it was a couple of years ago when he got paid. Like I have a feeling that's happening. We haven't seen Johnny Newton yet, so we don't even know what that is when he comes in here. The upgrade at linebacker is exponential. It's the biggest upgrade this team made. They've got a future Hall of Famer and another guy who I think is going to end up being the best free agent signing they made in Frankie Louvu. And then Quan Martin, Jeremy Chin are movable parts, and I think playmaking type players in run support and hopefully in pass support as well. I think up the middle, they're very, very strong. It's on the edges where will they have a consistent pass rush? Can they generate that? And are the corners good enough? Frankly, like I think those are the questions that I have about it. But up the middle, I love what I see. That's where I see the strength of the team going into the season.
Yeah, it's kind of a no notes answer from me for you on that. I mean, I completely agree. Speaking of up the middle, they did trade away John Ridgeway today. They sent Ridgeway in a 7th round pick next year for a 6th from the Saints. This was, going into cut down day, or as cut down day was sort of starting. I reported, as did others, that they were looking to trade him. It didn't happen right away, but there were still teams interested. Obviously, they did move him, and that opened up the spot for Noah Brown, the receiver that they signed today. The Newton part of the is interesting only in that we still haven't seen Newton do anything in all summer, more or less. So if he's better be ready, because you have Fedarian Mathis behind him, and they did add a couple of veteran defensive linemen today on the practice squad, Carlos Watkins and Sheldon Day. But who knows what that is. So if Newton's not ready to go, they may have been maybe a little thin at defensive tackle. That said, I don't really have an issue with the move for Ridgeway. If he, for whatever the reason, wasn't for them and they have other pieces, then get something for him. Don't have him hang around for no reason. If he's just going to be a guy who doesn't play much. So I didn't have an issue with that. Were you surprised at all that ultimately Ridgeway was the guy out and
No.
Darian Mathis was the guy that stayed?
No, because I had known there was interest in him around the league. I think the only surprise was it didn't happen before cutdown day. Like, and once he and Mathis were still on the roster, it was just hold on here for a minute. Like something clearly is going to happen with one of the two. I didn't know who at that point, but I assumed it would be Ridgeway just because I knew there was interest. And up the middle, at least traditionally under Quinn in the past, the types of defensive tackles, or at least the profiles, are the ones who are penetrative in pass play type defensive tackles. And this is probably why he is in love with Allen and Payne. These two, I've seen these stats a million times because they're always supplied to us. Like they are the leaders in like tackles for loss and quarterback hits over the last 4 years from the defensive tackle position.
Right.
So these are perfect profile players for them. You'll notice they didn't ask a lot of them in the preseason. So I think maybe they were envisioning this a little bit, that they may ask a lot of them early in the season until they get a rotation behind them, and that means Newton. So I'm with you on Newton. I don't know what I don't know yet. We haven't seen him play much. I know they're extremely high on him. I know everybody who did the draft thought this was a steal, like where he went, that he went like way lower than I think people thought he was going to. And I don't think it's a redundancy for them because I see a scenario by which they have 3 defensive tackles. And I saw Payne last year play on the edge a little bit. That was eye-opening, how actually effective he was at that. I think it rejuvenated him a little bit towards the last 4 games of the season. And this stuff is lost on a 4-13 team. But I'm waiting to see what Newton can do. But I have a feeling that some of the load management of Allen and Payne was probably in preparation for this. And for Ridgeway, it's not that he I guess that would lead to, was he really a scheme fit? And I think they kind of alluded to that. Peters and Quinn alluded to that today. He doesn't really fit the profile of the type of player that they're looking for in the middle, even though he is a good, solid NFL player who obviously had value on the trade market.
So this is now twice that a team with Dan Quinn as a prominent leader has moved on from Ridgeway, and this is twice that a team with Adam Peters as a prominent figure has moved on from Tariq Castro Fields. They waived him when he was as a rookie before he even played. So I'm sure those two guys don't want to see Peters or Quinn wherever they're employed going forward. All right, yeah. And by the way, I'll throw in running back looking like a strength, assuming that from what we see with Eckler, he looks spry, and Robinson I think to have a big year. So I think on offense I would say running back is the strength. All right, biggest concern. I think there's like the 2 candidates for me would be the offensive tackle and the corners. I gotta say, barring injuries, I'm more concerned about the corners, I think, right now than I am the tackles. Not that I think that Lucas and Wiley and Brandon Coleman, who said that he'll be able to practice in full starting tomorrow. I'm not saying that they are, Jacoby and Lachey, but I'm a little less concerned there. The outside corners, the fact that we're even discussing Mikey Sanderstill as a rookie, as a 5'9" corner who they were penciling in as the slot guy, is already being discussed as being one of the 2 outside corners when they go into those kinds of sets, I think says a lot about where the outside corners are. I think St. Just and Forbes, I've not given up on them, and we'll see what Mike Davis does. It's just hard to get terribly excited about this group. And then you see what's coming up. Mike Evans, week 1, looks like Malik Neighbors is going to be a real thing. Week 2, week 3, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, etc. So that for me is my biggest concern, is the outside corners.
Assuming Chase is playing, I'm assuming
yes, assuming
his holdout thing. So we'll see. He's got 2 years left on his deal too. I'm not really sure what tree's barking up, but whatever, that's their problem. I agree. I think it's corner. That's the one. There's another overarching, what I would call, I don't know if concern's the right word, but I would just be like, I want to see it to believe it, which is just, can this team produce explosive plays on offense? I'm not sure. I think it's going to come down to scheme, broken tackles, execution, more than skilled players that can pop them off at any point in time. Like, I think over the last few weeks, they profiled a couple of people in the hopes of seeing that happen. Michael Wiley comes to mind. I know he had a nice preseason, but it's not like he pulled off some 40-yard run or broke some tackles and ran away from everybody. Kaz Allen got profiled in a running back slot. I think they were hoping that they could figure that out. I know they're still both here on the practice squad, and maybe they come up at some point. But that read to me as just a signal of, which is, they like their team. they like it collectively, the skill position group, but I think it's an acknowledgement that they don't have the, Devon Achan, or the type of guy, Brees Hall, like the type of guy who could make an explosive play on his own. And that it's going to come down to really good execution. And I look at the receiving core as a whole, even before Brown showed up, and just look at the profile of the players that they kept. They're tough. They're physical. They block downfield. I'm not surprised De'Ami Brown emerged the way he did with this coaching staff. He fits the profile of the playing style they like. I'm not surprised someone like Byron Pringle is here, not just kick returns, but go watch how physical he is down the field. I think they're going to try to out execute people, out physical people. But this is the NFL, and you need big time, big play players. And I think there's a touch of an acknowledgement that they may or may not have that right now. So that would be an overarching concern. Albeit that said, the quarterback might be that guy. So we're gonna find that out, pretty early into his first season. And I agree with you on cornerback. To me, it's the biggest show me position. And there's a lot I like about the defense. And I'm leaning on Witt and Quinn have had so much success, specifically with secondaries and turning people into turnover machines, that I'm willing to wait out and just believe it. But, on its face, it looks like a vulnerability. So we're just going to see how it plays out.
Yeah. And I'm with you. And that's why I haven't been like going too crazy over what, Forbes is, who was better, I think, as camp progressed. But, if he gets beat for a touchdown, because I want to see what he's doing, how they're scheming him when the game is real and they're actually showing their defense, not.
I don't want to make this comparison. It's not a fair comparison, but like Trayvon Diggs gets beat a lot. And he also gets 9 interceptions. So you happy with that trade-off? Because if Forbes' upside is that he's fast, and when the ball comes his way, he catches it, right? And so if he ends up having in this defense 4, 5, 6 interceptions, maybe even more, but he gives up some big plays, will you take that trade-off? And I don't know. I hate a comparison to Diggs, but that's just, we've played Diggs so many times in the last few years that's what I see with him. It's boom or bust with him a lot. Like, you want to test him because he can be had and he can be beat. But if you make the wrong throw at the wrong time, or he makes the right jump of a route, it's going the other way. And maybe that's how they see Forbes a little bit here, that it might be a little boom or bust, but the boom could flip games because he's the one guy outside of Sanders still who, again, I think is a very smart player, could be a difference-making type player. But is he going to be getting a bunch of pick sixes? Like, I don't know. That's Forbes. That's why he was drafted in the first place, because he's the propensity to do things like that. And again, I'll just lean on this coaching staff to go, these guys in this particular spot on the field seem to really know what they're doing. They're experts in it. And maybe Forbes can turn into that. And can we live with, even when he went on TV, on the broadcast a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, I can't make a mistake. Everybody comes after me. Well, you can if you have 7 interceptions, because then people overlook some of those quote unquote mistakes when you get a pick in a third quarter of a game that's tied. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
By the way, I just noticed this. You are an early adopter of the Dan Quinn backwards hat. I'm looking at the picture behind you, and you and Quinn, look at you.
Oh, that one. So that one, I'll show this one to you. Hold on. Yeah. Well, this also, I don't know if Dan Quinn and I have this in common. Did he have long hair? Because I did. So I don't know if he had the long hair like I did.
That's a good point. What was that, Chris Samuel?
That's Chris Samuels, and this is from Osaka, Japan.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I have this picture. This was our Spurrier Japan preseason game trip.
We'll always have Osaka. Very nice. Well, look at you. You and Dan Quinn. Peas in the pot.
Yeah, backwards hats. Yeah. I've been
pod.
thinking about this actually, like in close games, if we head into a situation where the defense takes the field, they need to stop. Do I turn my hat backwards on the broadcast? Do we announce everybody go do that? I don't know. I got to think about that.
I think I
try not to be cheesy on the broadcast, but I've been thinking about things like that.
Look, there was a rally monkey at one point, I think, and literally a rally cap. That's a thing. So yeah, turning it around. I think that's this is a thing. We'll start this now. If things get hairy, go full Quinn with your hat.
The defense comes out, needs to make a stop in the second half. I would love to see the new Northwest Stadium, everybody in there, turn that hat around. Like, let's go.
Northwest Stadium. How about that? Good.
Hey, that's above my pay grade.
Look at them. Business. They're doing business. They lost some money. They got some back. Good for them.
I mean, they have a stadium in Washington, D.C. It was going to get named. So I'm sure they got a pretty penny for that one. But that one's above my pay grade. No
Right.
comment.
All right. Biggest surprise over the last 48 hours. And by that, I basically mean cuts and what's kind of happened since. What for you, Bram Weinstein, the biggest surprise over the last 48 hours?
I kind of came to the conclusion recently that we wouldn't have one, and I don't think we did. So this is a minor surprise, is KJ Henry. That to me is like, it's a minor surprise. Like, like I thought he had a pretty good preseason. He checked certainly every Rivera box. He's a captain of his team, played in a big program, military background. Like he's got all of it. And I thought he was getting better and better. And once they drafted a defensive end, and once he started to make a couple plays in the preseason, even as a 7th round pick, I knew that spelled trouble for somebody. And then Jamin Davis is taking, exclusive reps at, edge. That spells trouble for somebody. For some reason, I just never kind of thought Henry was in trouble, but I guess, numbers dictated it. So I would call that on the surprise meter a 3, but like there was no wow, they did that. None of that happened here. And I think maybe the only surprise today, I guess, was they had the second, slot in the waiver order and picked up nobody. I agree with the sentiment of you don't just pick up people to pick up people because you can. You pick them up if you think they're going to upgrade your team, and they surmise that they did not. In the same way, like when we talked about tackle earlier, like I'm surprised that at no point in time in this offseason did they go get a veteran to come in and compete or potentially start at left tackle this year. I thought for sure that would happen. It did not. But if you do go back to the free agent market, like the ones that were going to cost a pretty penny, either re-signed with their teams or were not players that I personally would have spent that kind of money on. So you're stuck by whatever your options are. And I didn't think their options were good on the high end of the market. And then on the middle to low end of the market, I thought they would do something, and they didn't. The only other thing, so I guess that would be the only surprise, but then name me the person that they should have picked up on waivers, and I'll wait for your answer on that. So, like they didn't think there was anybody that was going to significantly upgrade their team. They clearly like the team that they have. This is a first go, so it's hard for me to know, but like, I think you can fall in love with your own people a little bit sometimes, and this feels like just a very minor sign of that. But outside of that, I can't think of anybody that was like out there that I'm like, I can't believe they didn't go try to get that person, because name that person. I'll wait.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I agree. Of the players that they let go, KJ Henry would be the bigger surprise. I think for me, it's sort of like, I would love to be able to ask Adam Peters, you're telling me you couldn't have released Jeremy McNichols? Like, so just to be clear, if Henry had not been claimed, he was coming back to the practice squad. So it wasn't like they were like, go away. Okay. So you're telling me you couldn't have cut Jeremy McNichols and picked him back up in 24 hours and kept KJ Henry just to do it? And then bring McNichols up for your first week or two as the...
Yeah, sure. You're not going to go into a game with 2 running backs.
Right. So you bring him up. They also, the practice where they picked Wiley is back, Chris Rodriguez is back. So like they already have other guys. But yeah, I'm just saying like that. Your KJ Henry's that expendable, but okay, that's what they did. And on the tackle thing, just because you brought it up, I just think for me it's been the same at every step in free agency where they were picking in the draft. Everything felt like it was going to be a reach either financially or in the case of the draft,
Agree.
the pick. And Peters, it was kind of the question I asked him, we'll get to this later, about his ability to be very disciplined this whole time, a whole offseason. And he stayed that all the way here to the end to have the second spot in the waiver order and not use it. I think a lot of people are just like, well, I have to use it, otherwise we look stupid. No, he didn't see anything. So he moved on. My biggest surprise, sort of along what you just said, obviously that they didn't use it. If you had told me a week ago, hey, they got the second pick in the waiver order, they're not going to use it, but 2 of the players that they let go are going to get claimed. Not that many teams had multiple players claimed
Yeah.
That is bizarre. Tariq
Yeah.
Castro Field was claimed by the Panthers. Like Henry, I don't think it's like neither one is like, oh wow, they're going to regret that. But at the same time, it's just funny that this team that we keep saying, oh, they don't have enough talent and this, that, and the other. And I would still say they have a lot of holes, but that they had 2 guys picked up without using their pick, I just thought was hilarious.
I'm not surprised KJ Henry got picked up like at
No,
all, and I'm not surprised Castro Fields got picked up. Like he was one of them that by the end of the weekend, I'm like, that's a tough decision. Like, could that be a surprise and someone we don't expect to get released gets picked over them? And that wouldn't have surprised me. And I guess that we're validated in thinking that way because he did get picked up on waivers. Like no one wanted to let him clear waivers. So
and he was picked up on
he's
waivers
that
by
one.
the first team. Carolina had the #1
That's
pick.
right.
Washington, and they were the team they picked up 4 corners in the last 24 hours. I
Yeah.
don't even know what their depth chart looks like, but that seems insane.
I mean, maybe, like, and here's, we think our biggest vulnerability is that position and we're cutting people.
Right.
They're picking them up. I know.
But
He was one that I thought like that might be a surprise. I thought they'd lose Cole Turner too. I'm surprised he made it through waivers. I thought someone would pick him up.
that I did. I heard like a week ago or so that they were telling teams that they had extra to trade at receiver, which was Jahan, defensive tackle, obviously then Ridgeway,
Yeah.
safety, and tight end. I couldn't comprehend that anybody would trade for Cole Turner. So no offense to Cole Turner.
Yeah, I didn't expect a trade, but I did expect him to get claimed. He's big, he's got good hands, a team that is
got a good mustache
light on receiving tight ends. I thought someone would take a flyer on him.
And on the topic of like losing Castro Fields, I don't know where you were. I can't remember where you were at the end, but I was one of the people that had Derek Forrest not on the 53, not because it was like he's terrible. It's like, well, they have too many safeties in my head. I'm like, okay, well, he's 6 corners. That's kind of the norm, right? Okay. So I gave it to Anusium, who's also back on the practice squad. And after it didn't happen, they kept Forrest and only kept 5 corners. I realized that I'm an idiot because Peters basically did the same thing he did in the draft. He took the best player available, and Derek Forrest is a better player that we have seen than any of the other cornerbacks 100%. They could have kept. So he has been disciplined again all the way through, including at this aspect where, and again, the safety corner thing, Quan Martin can play some corner. They can mix and match that when they have to, and they still have 5. It's not like they don't have any. So I just thought that was interesting as well. All right, since I've mentioned Peters now a couple of times, let me go to this. I know you had a chance to watch the Peters Quinn press conference today. Biggest takeaway from that. Now, there wasn't a lot of news said, and Peters is pretty, again, disciplined about what he has to say. But what was your biggest takeaway? And you can include whatever Quinn said yesterday, the previous day, if you want, right after the moves.
I think they like their team. Like, I think they're realistic, about like what the end game is, but like them both emphasizing we're trying to win now was interesting to hear. And maybe some of that is confidence in the quarterback, because I think they needed him to go through a process that if he's going to feel like a rookie, even if they feel like there's this big upside to him, well, you have to, temper expectations that there's going to be baked in ups and downs. I think they're uber confident in what they're going to get out of him. And he still is a rookie, and I am too. Like every step of the way, I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself with him. Like there is not a single day that where I've gone, well, he's going to have to fix that, or, oh, they're going to have to work on this. Not once have I felt that way about him. And so I feel good that they're going to get off to a really good start with him under center. And I guess we'll find out. Week 1's really interesting. That's a playoff team. Todd Bowles is a pressure maniac. So let's find out, like, we'll see what it looks like, in week 1 when he gets his first go, and we'll see who the tackle is. I mean, that's a really interesting decision that they have to make to put out there to try to protect him. But that was my takeaway today, that I agree with you. They've been disciplined from the get-go. None of that changed through all of this. They like their guys a lot. Time will tell if maybe a touch too much, but we'll see. They like their guys, they're confident in their guys, and them kind of reiterating, and almost forcefully, that we're not trying to win in 3 years. We think we can win some now. That resonated with me, and I hope they're right because I'm ready for them to start winning too, honestly. And I'm ready. Like, let's go. Like, I've really liked what I've seen here. I think this is I think they've got, when we get the comparisons to Houston, because CJ Stroud had this great rookie year and everyone thinks Jaden Daniels might have that kind of year. And I hope they're right about that. Um, I don't think realistically they're in Houston's division. So I think that's what's going to be very difficult about having that kind of outcome. But I do feel really good. I think the vibes are good. All the stuff about they're going to play hard. You're going to like the way we play. We're going to be very connected. I've seen so many signs of that throughout the summer. So I'm pumped too. And I hope that they get validated in their belief that this is a team that clearly has some vulnerabilities and potentially some flaws, but I guess everybody does. But they feel like they are better than people think they are. And I hope they're right about it. I can't wait to see if they are.
So yesterday, or in the last previous podcast I did, I mentioned that I thought something Dan Quinn said on Tuesday when we knew that, okay, Tyler Owens and Colson Yankoff, two undrafted free agents, were on the team. And he said that they sort of exemplify what it is that they are trying to build. Guys who are just going to, run through the wall, that type of deal, be uber competitive, aggressive, all that. And they do represent that. We had a chance to talk to Yankoff today after practice. But to sort of then lead into today, again, the discipline aspect of it. But you're saying that they talked about that they think they can win, and I don't disagree because you have to think that way if nothing else, right? You have to believe that because you need the team to compete, and even if the wins don't come, you need them to compete. But I think we must have asked as a group like 4 or 5 different questions, all of the same way. Are you really prepared to do you understand why fans want you to trade for Brandon Ayuk? Why they want you to make some bigger move? I don't know if you can see Peter's smile when I asked. Yeah. I didn't even say Ayuk's name. I just said, some people don't want you to be so disciplined and go trade for your guy in your former team. I think that to me said a lot as well. Like, yeah, of course they want to win, but they're not going to screw up the winning long term for the short fix now. And that's why I keep screaming at the people who want them to trade for Ayuk. It makes zero sense for where they are right now to trade multiple picks and then pay this guy a contract averaging $30 million a year at a position. While it's important, it is not nearly as important as other ones that they're weak at: tackle, corner, pass rush. And the fact that they are staying within their lane of, here's what we're doing. We're not going to get crazy here just because this is a shiny toy being flashed in front of us. And I think the fact that we all asked multiple questions about that says something about where we're looking at it from the outside. And, their moves have said a lot. I mean, over and over and over again, they've not taken the bait for that short-term fix.
No, and you know what? Like, I've seen a lot of examples of this throughout the offseason, through the summer too. They are not taking cues from the outside. The previous front office / head coach did, over and over and over. And many times felt like he was pushed into making decisions that maybe he didn't want to make, or he would try to put narratives out to you guys and try to get you to kind of follow these narratives. And then if they didn't go so well and you would ask him about the narrative that he put out there, he would defend it. That's not what's happening here. So there's so many examples of this where, first couple of weeks of camp, we're watching Jamin Davis and I'm sitting there going, I don't know, man. Like we all were I don't know if it's going to work out, but internally they felt completely different about it and were unmoved by any outside noise about him. I think the same is happening with Emmanuel Forbes. A team with lesser fortitude or trust in their own instincts and their own developmental ways of working with players may have succumbed to, it's not looking good with that guy. Well, we might as well just move on. They didn't do that at all. And in fact, I think he's improved. I think his confidence is getting better. The way they talk about him, the way they're supporting him is very different than what I'm accustomed to. So, this is good. They're very tight-lipped. I like that. We don't need, I know it's not the Pentagon, but we also don't need to be sharing all the time. Sorry. I know you need that information. I don't personally, but I actually think it's a good thing in the long term that they're a far more tight ship that way. Second, they're very disciplined in what they do. They haven't done one thing where I was like, what are you doing? Not once have I seen this. I did like how they baseline the roster. Almost every single deal they gave out, either it doesn't have a lot of term or certainly doesn't have a lot of cash attached to it. They can get out of anything. Like I like this. They've been slow rolling Jaden. They have not thrust him into the spotlight and made him be face of the franchise. And in all these little, molehills that we always try to turn into mountains because that's what we do, they're just not falling for it. They're staying the course. It's happened over and over and over. I get to have some meetings with the coaching staff a little bit, get ready to do the broadcast. And the things they say just do not match sometimes some of the things that are going on the outside. And so I feel it that what is happening, like you always hear this so cliche. They're always like, what's going on in here is not what's going on out there. It's true so far here. Now they got to go play real games and let's see what happens if their record's not very good. What then happens? Because it's all well and good when you say you've got your plan and you're supportive and all these things, but you end up with a bad record and then you have to explain yourself. I don't expect that to happen. I think this team's going to be extremely competitive. I couldn't give you a guess on what the record's going to be, but I know it's not going to be like last year. But all those signs of like we're in it together, hard S with good people, like I believe it. Like it doesn't feel like cliches to me. And that's why I'm very excited about what is being built here under this group. Have they, maybe in the end here have a little bit of too much belief in the group that they have? I don't know. I think we'll find out, as we go along here.
All right, last one, potentially the most fun one. Rank your wide receivers. Now, there are 6 on the roster. Well, I think we know who one is. They have 6 on the roster, and we can include, if you feel like it, Bryson Tremaine and Mitchell Tinsley, who were also added to the practice squad. I'm only talking about receivers, not talking about Jamison Crowder or Pringle returning anything. Basically just saying, we talk about wide receiver 2, even though they in the building don't look at it that way.
I don't either, actually. I don't either.
Well, that's fair. I always think it's a misnomer, and I think what's interesting about this group is they have individual skills that potentially, if they click on their individual skills, could make this thing work, i.e. somebody's a deep threat, somebody's a slot guy, somebody's a blocker, those kinds of things. You use them in the right spot. But that said, for the purposes of, the way fans like to talk about these things, rank your receivers. I think we both agree Terry McLaurin's number 1.
Do I count Eckler in this?
I'm saying no.
Do I count Ertz in this?
No.
Just wide receivers.
True wide receivers.
Fine.
So Terry 1.
Okay.
Who would be your number 2? Whatever that means to you.
This is hard to do because I'm with them on there is no number 2. Like we don't designating anybody number 2.
Sure.
Because we're going to ask the rest of this group to do many different things.
Sure.
And I'm hoping that some of those things don't become tells
how about this?
What they are.
How about this? Rank them based on how you think that within the individual jobs that they kind of have to do, they will succeed or not. Like, who will do best at the thing that they have to do?
I am not surprised Dyami Brown emerged the way he did at all. Over the last couple of years, he's been a physical player who's extremely willing to be part of special teams and would make tackles on it. And so when you talk about, go look at the profile of this group. Pringle's tough. Crowder is tough. Dyami is tough. I think McCaffrey probably is going to fall into this category too. Zacchaeus is that way, even though he's diminutive, but like he is, like Terry's tough. Like it is very clear what they value in that position.
And by the way, can I just say that like the guy they traded, I'm not saying he's not tough because he's a football player, but he wasn't quite that guy. I think that's a big, like they're not going to say it, but I think that was a big factor.
Say it. Like, listen, like I am not surprised Dyami Brown is getting the opportunities he's getting because I know how physical he is. This is a team that without a ton of explosiveness, and maybe Eckler gives it to him. Maybe at times B-Rob gives it to him. I know Terry can at times. But if you look on the whole, there's not Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams or all these guys running around out there. They're going to have to out-execute and out-physical people. And I look at that group, and I see a very physical group. So if you want me to say number 2, it's Dyami because he can run deep routes. He can make contested catches. And I know what he's going to be in the run game and blocking down the field. And I think that's why he's emerged the way that he has here. They trust him. When they finally kind of opened it up a little bit last week and started showing us a little bit before they started to shut down practices, started showing us some of the plays, there were so many times the play was coming around to him and he was blocking. Like they trust him that way. Like, so I'm hoping he gets some opportunities to make some plays down the field because I think he's capable of it. But I think they like his presence on the field. So he would be, if you have to give number two to him.
Yeah.
McCaffrey, I
Well,
don't know enough.
let me
You know,
just say,
don't know enough.
I agree with you there in the sense that, like, I just think his ability to get down the field, plus with a quarterback who wants to go down the field, an offensive coordinator who wants to go down the field, I think is going to work in that regard. And by the way, as a guy who's only talking about football, not playing, they're all way tougher than me. I'm not saying Jahan isn't tough. I'm just saying that, like, his style, he's more of like a 3-point shooter in the NBA than he is a guy who's going to, like, defend you up 94 feet. That's all I'm saying. And they want that guy. All right, so for the third guy, I'm gonna go Noah Brown. He hasn't even played, he hasn't even practiced yet. And maybe this is because I was like back in free agency. He was the guy that I wanted them to get that I thought made sense. But you look at the profile, 6'2", he's a blocker. Last year had a big, fantasy football players know he had a big surge for like a 3-week period that really boosted his stats. But he averaged over 17 yards a catch. I think he's eventually going to be one of the top 3 guys for them to some degree. And I think his physical presence is going to be a big deal eventually. So I'm going to go, even though I haven't even seen him play here, I'll go Noah Brown 3.
Yeah, he's exempt for me because I haven't seen him play. So it's really hard for me to pick him.
Come on, just got to shoot from your hip. What are you doing?
I guess. I don't know. McCaffrey's pedigree, and I know how hard he works. I think he's going to be a contributor, but I need to see him play more. I do like Zacchaeus a lot.
Yeah.
He can go inside. He can go outside. I talked to him last week, and he had said something. He was talking like in a group, and someone asked him, like about breaking out or something. And he goes, I feel like I could have done it for the last 2 years. So he's been dying for an opportunity like this. He's going to get it. He's going to get a lot of playing time early in the season, inside and outside. So we'll see what kind of role he has here, but I like him.
So who's your number 3? Just give me your 3, and then I'll let you off the hook.
3. All right. So it's Terry, Diami, and I'll go for now Zacchaeus, but I'll hear you out on Noah Brown becomes that for them.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, like I said, this is going to have to be a group by committee situation. And in each scenario where they need something specific, I think they have a guy that could do it in theory. Question will be, does it all work out as a plan? All right. Bram, you obviously rule. I appreciate it. Tell everybody, I guess, you mentioned a couple things. You got your podcast, you moved it over here. You're still over there on 6:30.
Yeah.
What you calling games? You Washington Spirit. You got that going on.
Do.
Yeah. I saw you had a pod. You did something with London Fletcher the other day on the team site.
Yeah.
Boy,
I'm busy.
You're busy. Anything else I didn't mention?
For our purposes, I'd love for you guys to listen to the games on the radio. That'd be great. I do it with London and Logan Paulson, and we can't wait for week 1 in Tampa. I'm really pumped to see what we have. And I'm not even really sure what we're going to see. I think they've hidden a lot of who they are, both sides of the ball. So like, it's going to be a surprise to us too. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. And then the radio show moved to 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock. But in that, and every time I talk about this, I like to thank ESPN 630 for letting this happen. It is now a podcast that gets aired from 11 to 12 exclusively first before we actually upload it out into the universe. But Empire Media now owns that show, which is really great for me. I've been wanting that to happen for a very long time. And I think it's good for us, collectively as a team. So subscribe, please. You'll probably hear a promo of me in this podcast telling you to subscribe to the show because it kind of, like Ben's, we had to kind of start from scratch. I had to do a new feed. So we had to start from scratch, and we're asking everybody to come over to it. So every day, 5 days a week, the show is up at noon. If you would subscribe to that show, it'd be great. Love for you to listen to John's show. Obviously, Last Man Standing. For those of you who had an old feed and can't figure it out, hopefully you find this one and migrate over with Ben, and we're going to continue to grow all of the audiences together. I firmly believe that we collectively are going to put out, I think, the best, most insightful Commanders coverage, and then extend, especially with you, into some more of the DMV sports teams like the Wizards specifically in the area. So I'm really pumped about what we're building here, and hopefully everybody kind of joins, become a subscriber. A lot of these shows go on YouTube, so subscribe to Empire Media on YouTube, subscribe to all our shows. I like all your feedback, and then now I'll stop talking.
And I mentioned in the intro that tomorrow, meaning Thursday, my annual NFL agent survey is coming out. So give you some of that national perspective. And the Commanders are mentioned a few times. I'll leave it at that.
Hopefully positively, I hope. We'll see. We'll find out. What a tease, Ben. We'll find out. That's called, that in the radio business and the podcast business is called a tease. Very good.
There you go. All right, Bram. Appreciate it, man. I'll see you tomorrow, practice.
Yeah, I'll see you.